Hi, I'm Jill Hunter, and I'm here with Karen Hyde, who I've known since 1981. Karen was the vice principal at Saratoga High for how many years?
A long time, 34, 5, 6, a long time.
And when I showed up at Saratoga High in 1981, I had a 16-year-old boy and I was pregnant. So every school I went to, they remembered me because I was not a young mother. But anyway, so over the years, subsequently, after being here for many, many years and having a lot of exchange students and everything, many, many years, and working outside your classroom as your office as a volunteer. But anyway, I got to know Karen. And Karen, nobody can match Karen Hyde as far as I'm concerned.
Silly lady.
So anyway, let's talk about your past. Let's talk about your years. So what was the first year?
I came here in fall of 76.
Yeah.
So my first graduating class was 77.
Here at Saratoga High.
Here at Saratoga High School. Before that, I had taught at Los Gatos.
Yes.
It's kind of an interesting story, too. Back then, it was kind of the superintendent ran districts, and I was at a meeting in the summer. It was smoking cessation, and he tapped me on the shoulder and said, "See me after." And I thought, what did I do now? Because that was my usual. And went in and he said, "Why didn't you apply for the dean at Saratoga?" I said, "Why would I want to be dean at Saratoga?" And he said, "Because it's a great entree into administration." And I said, "But I love what I do. I was teaching at Los Gatos. I had the cheerleaders, I did the choreography, and I love Los Gatos." And he said, "Well, I think we need to talk." And it wasn't a talk, it was more of an arm bending. And in August, I was over here, and that was it. And I've never left.
You never left, but you could have. I always assumed you could have been principal at some point if you'd jumped.
God.
But
Yeah.
you always said you didn't want to do it.
No. I became a teacher because I like kids.
Yeah.
And I think once you're principal, you're dealing with policy and parents.
Yes.
You're not dealing with students.
Yeah.
And that isn't something I would have ever done.
And you couldn't have 35 kids in your office
No.
hanging out all the time.
No.
Which you always did.
Which I loved.
Yes.
Which I loved.
Yeah.
Yes.
Well, I'll remember when my oldest son came home and he said, Mrs. Perry in those,
Yes.
it was the most beautiful woman in the whole world. And I was a bit turned off. I thought your son's supposed to think you're the most beautiful one. He said, nobody can match her. Nobody can match her.
See,
and
what
he
happens-
adored you.
That's why I liked what I did, because when I go home or went home to my two children, they were like I was chopped liver. So it's always nice to have appreciation from somebody outside the home. And I was ever grateful for the mentors that my kids had, because certainly I knew nothing. I knew with my younger, when I started doing college admissions, and he told me that I didn't know what I was doing,
Yeah.
I knew there was a reason for people in my position to approach someone other than your own children.
Yes.
Because we know nothing.
Yes.
Yes.
Well, and I still remember when you were pregnant with that youngest, and your older one too.
Yes.
But anyway, that's down the line a bit.
Yes.
That's into the 90s.
Yes.
So
1994.
let's go. So you arrived in the 70s, and what did the high school look like in those days?
It was huge, and eventually,
How many kids?
I'd say 1,800.
Really?
And currently, I think they'll be around 1,450.
That's pretty big.
It is big
Yeah.
comparatively, but we were about 1,800. Virtually all white kids.
Yeah.
This was an upper middle class mostly. They had not yet developed the hills. This was always known, even when I was at Los Gatos, this was known as the academic school.
Yes.
Los Gatos was the sports school, Saratoga was the academic school. And I came over thinking, oh, this ought to be fun. The reality was they didn't do a lot of activities. So it was fertile ground. So anything I'd suggest, like, let's do a drill team, and the kids would go, great. Let's have homecoming. Great.
Yeah.
Because they hadn't done it.
Yes.
Because this was really save for Benny Pierce, the god of all sports.
Yes.
This was really an academic school.
Yeah.
And certainly not academic like it is now, but certainly academic, more so than Los Gatos. So it was fun because the kids were just anxious to do anything that would be fun because that hadn't existed.
Tell us about the design of the school. It's a really unusual design. How do you know how it worked out that way?
Well, and I wouldn't have if it weren't for my younger son, Mac, who is kind of quirky and did some research about the school and is still doing research about kind of the history of the school, and found that the school was actually designed by people at Stanford University.
Huh.
I know. And it was designed to be focused on academics, so it was a learning environment, and clearly it is modeled that extraordinarily well.
So closed off from the community almost.
Closed off from the community in pods, so they would have a math pod and an English pod, and the hallways it was open to the halls, and I think it allowed students to feel they were part of the environment, but still enclosed enough that you would focus on your classes.
Uh-huh.
So that has been really, really interesting.
How does it affect having this interior open area? And I always love that there are trees, there's grass for the kids to sit on.
And they do.
Yeah.
They embrace it. And many years ago, in the 80s, we did graduation in the quad.
Yes.
And that was prior to grad night. It just welcomed students. It was part of who they were. We would do assemblies in the quad. We could do rallies in the quad. We even did when Judith Sutton ran VITA, Valley Institute of Theater Arts. She and Bill Peck did theater, Shakespearean theater at night in the quad.
Really?
Which was amazing.
Yeah.
It just brought everything together. So their talents and the environment and the natural lighting was phenomenal.
Yes. Well, it is. It's really, actually, my son in 1983 was the first one who graduated at the Flint Center.
Oh, that's right.
He went to the Flint Center, and we were all so upset, the parents were, because we thought it should be at the high school. But it turned out to be a very hot day, and we were kind of glad to be locked in the Flint Center.
I remember it well.
But you're outside again now, out back.
Yes. So they went from the quad, and then grad night, excuse me, took over, and they went from the quad to Flint, from Flint to the upper field for about 2 or 3 years, and you couldn't see and you couldn't hear, which was horrible. When they redid the upper field and the football field was being redesigned, we used the baseball field 1 year, and that was horrific. We were smushed in this little tiny baseball field, and then we went to the football field, and anyone can attend. So you don't need tickets. It's inviting, and people from the community and lots of alumni come back, which I find enchanting.
Yes.